Oh yes, I have OCD. I was diagnosed very young. It has tremendously impacted my life over the years. It still does, not to the same degree, but obviously, as a trigger warning, I'm gonna be talking about like some sensitive topics in this video. So if someone can't handle it, don't watch it. So as a millennial, something that I have so much like gratitude towards the Gen Z generation about is the fact that they are so open about mental illness, especially intrusive thoughts. If I had of had that awareness when I first started dealing with them when I was young, if I just knew I wasn't alone and that I wasn't like a monster, I would have spent so much less time struggling and so much less time in pain. I truly think that that like open line of communication and transparency saves so many lives. So just for anybody who doesn't know, who doesn't have like experience in like OCD or Puro, which is like a subset of OCD, many people who have OCD, they struggle with intrusive thoughts. Now these are usually thoughts that surround very like taboo things or actions, etc. It has been proven that those who have these intrusive thoughts, like never act on them, because the reason you're having them is because you don't want them. They call it like the pink elephant effect, I think. Like if you told yourself right now, don't think of a pink elephant, you're thinking of a pink elephant. These intrusive thoughts will typically surround things that are considered like very taboo in society or like maybe in your family or, your small community. Some examples, since HIV is heavily stigmatized, and obviously I mean nothing bad about this, I'm open about having HSV too. But since it's stigmatized a lot of people are like terrified that they have STDs, they convince themselves that they have STDs. They'll obsess over the fact that they might have an STD, even if they're pretty sure they probably don't. People that come from religious backgrounds that do not condone like homosexuality or being trans, sometimes they'll have intrusive thoughts like, what if I'm gay? And they'll be like questioning themselves, oh my god, what if I'm gay, what if I'm trans, because the way they're raised, like it's a taboo. There's a lot that surrounds like being a predator. A lot of people will avoid going around like schools. They'll avoid like even having children because they've convinced themselves they're a monster. So my intrusive thoughts started very, very young, but when they started becoming like consuming, they surrounded religion. I grew up Irish Catholic, and while my family is honest, they've honestly always been accepting of me, as much as they could. Like sometimes they don't understand, like, my transition or, before that when I was a masculine lesbian, but they try their best. They've never been like, we condemn you, you're not welcome. They've never like disowned me or anything. But growing up religious and like just having that ideology, like, that there's a heaven, there's a hell, there's sinning, there's always a chance of like eternal damnation. I literally, like, I would obsess over it. I was constantly terrified that I was hellbound. If I was telling a story to one of my friends, I had to constantly like be praying in my head and try to simultaneously have the conversation because I thought if I exaggerated even just a little, then that was lying and that was sinning, so I had to repent. When I was saying my prayers at night, I had to repeat them over and over. That's a common one you see. If I had like a thought that was impure, I had to start over because I couldn't think of something impure while I was praying. I remember at the time I actually had like a mental health worker who she would like come to my house and like take me places. She was like a functional support worker. And one day I told her about these intrusive thoughts I was having and I was terrified. I thought, oh my god, if I tell somebody like these intrusive thoughts, they're gonna think I'm disgusting, they're gonna think I'm evil, they're gonna think I'm sick. What if I get put in a hospital? Oh my god, like that, I can't tell anybody these, but I did. And she was very like nonchalant about it, like she had heard all of it before, and that really helped. However, then she mentioned, well, since you're religious, and, since you feel all this, like, guilt about these thoughts and stuff like that, maybe you should try going to confession. And oh my god, that wasn't good advice. But I did. She was a mental health professional, so I did. I was only a teenager. I was like, okay. And, I did. I went to confess. And that was not a good idea. Because here's the thing. When you do things like confess and like ask for validation from friends that you're not crazy, you're not sick and stuff when it comes to intrusive thoughts, you're validating the thoughts. You're giving them life. And when I first read this concept, because I found a message board of people struggling with Puro, which I was just like, the angels had rained over me. Like, I could not believe that I had found people going through what I went through. I do want to say just a warning, if anyone does seek out like message boards for help, they can be very helpful, but also please be careful because they can also be very triggering. But I found these people who like were going through what I went through, and some of them were very like experienced in dealing with it and stuff. And they talked about how the only like way to deal with these thoughts is to basically make them not a big deal. Because what happens is if you have like a horrible thought, like say you have an intrusive thought, which once again, I feel like I have to reiterate because you know there's people watching that don't understand OCD. If you have a thought that you have no chance of acting on, like, oh, I want to harm this person, and you're like, oh my God, no, no, I would never do that. God, forgive me. God, no, I would never. I used to always say, like, constantly growing up, I always used to say, God protects me from evil. God protects me from evil. God protects me from evil. Sounds like a fucking horror movie, but that's literally what I used to say to myself. When I would have those thoughts, I'd say, God protects me from evil. But that validates the thought because you're reacting in like a tense and like shocked manner. See, the goal is to respond to those thoughts in a very nonchalant way, like whatever. And like when I first read that, I'm like, that's stupid. That's stupid. That's not gonna work because it's so little and it's so stupid. And I remember reading like you can see results within like 15 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, fucking right. Yeah, right. But I didn't know how to do this because these were like horrible thoughts. So how could I not how could a person who's like a good person not react to thoughts like that? But I had to find a way. So what I did is whenever I had an intrusive thought, I would say to myself, I recognize that that's my OCD, and I'm okay with that. That way I wasn't saying like, hey, I'm okay with whatever this thought is doing in my head, you know what I mean? But you're saying, I recognize that this is just, a mental health issue, and I'm okay with that. And I kid you not, responding with that after like just responding with that for maybe like not, it wasn't even a day. Already my symptoms started to alleviate. I remember going to the movies with my mom, like going, because I wasn't really doing anything. I was just consumed by these thoughts. I was convinced of so many things. I was convinced that I was a predator. I'm sure that a lot that played into that is that I did grow up Irish Catholic, and a lot of people with this type of OCD have religious trauma. But in, the religion I grew up in, people don't outwardly talk about it, but being trans, being gay, like that is considered a perversion. So I literally, like, I had myself convinced I was this horrible predator. I didn't want to be around like my friends' kids and stuff. I didn't want to, like, I would just consumed me. I had awful thoughts that I was going to go to hell, that I had no conscience. What if I was really an awful person? So instead, when I got those thoughts, instead of being like, God protects me from evil, I'd say, I recognize that this is my OCD, and I'm okay with that. And I still actually do that till this day. Like, I don't have as many intrusive thoughts because I've been practicing that for so long, but when I do occasionally have one, I do the same thing. I'm running out of time, this is so long. Usually I make my videos like this shorter, but I'm not gonna because I think this can really help people. One other thing I do when I'm having like intrusive thoughts is a radio dial exercise. A lot of mothers deal with intrusive thoughts. Like that's something I knew that when I got pregnant, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be dealing with this. Because obviously, like your children, they mean the world to you. You want so bad to be just a good parent. So OCD latches onto that. They'll have thoughts about like harming their children and think they're evil and horrible. Oh, I'm not saying don't get help if you have serious thoughts like that, but sometimes it is intrusive thoughts related to OCD. I'm not a mental health professional, but I've been through it. So what you do with the dial exercise is you draw a radio dial, and there is like a low section, a mid section, and a high section. In the middle, you can write what you're scared of, like I'm afraid I'm a horrible mother. Now, the low side would be an irrationally low reaction. Like, who gives a shit? There's a lot of bad moms in history. Who gives a fuck or something like that? The high one would be, oh my God, I'm a monster. I'm a horrible person and I'm a threat to my kid. And the middle one would be, hey, this is obviously OCD. Like, I can recognize that and it's my anxiety. It helps you find that middle ground. I hope this helps.